Hello grade 8, welcome back to another video YouTube lesson. So today we are moving on with solving multiplication and division equations. Yesterday we looked at adding and subtraction of equations, and today is going to be multiply and divide. So we're going to start off with a very simple example. So we want to solve the equation. Let's say we have negative 3x is equal to 45. Now this time we can see that our variable has a coefficient. So whenever we have a variable, so quick note here. So when there is a coefficient, when there is a coefficient in front that is not 1, coefficient that is not 1 in front of the variable, we need to multiply or divide to isolate the variable. Okay, so we need to, when it's not 1. So why did I say when it's not 1? For example, if we have x plus 3 is equal to 8, for example, there is an invisible 1 in front of our variable, 1x, but we just don't write it. It's just x. So there is a coefficient of 1 that is in front of our x. So in that case, we don't need to multiply or divide. All we have to do is subtract 3 to both sides. But in this case, we have a negative 3. So how do we actually get rid of the 3? So since we have negative 3 multiplied to x, so we have negative 3 is multiplied to x. So to get rid of the 3, so to make the negative 3 disappear, we need to do the opposite of multiplied by x, multiplied to x, which is to divide that term. So we need to now divide both sides by negative 3 in order to make the negative 3 disappear. So if you look over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this side by negative 3, and I'm going to divide the other side also by negative 3. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 3, and so negative 3 divided by negative 3, that disappears. Now we're only left with x is equal to 45 over negative 3, which is going to be negative 15. So we've solved the equation x is equal to negative 15. So one thing I want us to keep very clear is that when multiplying and dividing, so make a note over here, when multiplying or dividing both sides, actually let me just write it in words. When multiplying and dividing in equations, we must multiply / divide the whole expression on both sides. What do I mean by we must multiply and divide the whole expression? So for example, you may have seen some people make this mistake, or some people probably would make this mistake in multiple step problems. That'll be for next lesson. So let's say we had a 3x plus 5 is equal to, all right, let's just do, we have 3x plus 5 is equal to 9, for example. Oh no, let's do 3x plus 5 is equal to 14 as an example. And then this is fairly simple. You are supposed to take away 5 first. But what some people accidentally do is they do this. They're gonna, oh, okay, there's 3x, there's 3 in front of the variable, so I'm going to divide 3 and I'm going to divide 3, and then they do x plus 5 is equal to 14 over 3. And so this is completely wrong. And so that's when my note here comes into play. When multiplying and dividing in equations, we must multiply the whole expression on both sides. The whole expression. So if you really do want to divide the first thing, if you want to do step 1 is you want to divide, you have to divide the whole expression by 3. And so we will have over here, that's going to be 3x over 3 plus 5 over 3. So that's going to be 3x over 3 plus 5 over 3. I can separate it out. That's equal to 14 over 3. And then in the end, 3x over 3 becomes x. And then we can move the 5 over 3 to the other side. So that becomes x is equal to 14 over 3 minus 5 over 3. And then in the end, we will still get 9 over 3. That will be 3. So in the end, it will still work. But we need to make sure if we do want to multiply the first step or divide the first step, it needs to be to the whole expression on both sides. You cannot just multiply to part of an expression on one side. So keep that in mind. So it must be to the whole expression on both sides. Okay, so keep that in mind. But for today, it's only going to be a single step. You don't need to do this in today's lesson. This will be for next lesson. But I just want to teach us how to do this while we are learning the basics of multiplying and divide. Now, when do we ever need to use divide? Well, this is already multiplying and divide. We are dividing both sides by -3 to get rid of the -3. So when will we have to actually use multiply to both sides for this? So let's say we had another example, example 2. Or actually, before we go on to example 2, I want us to do some practices. So I'm going to give you a few example questions. So I want you to do these questions first. So pause the video after I set the questions, do them, and then afterwards I want you to check your answer. So example questions. So A, let's do 6a is equal to 54. B, we have -13b is equal to 65. And then C, we have I think this could be a good practice for some of you. Let's do -17 is equal to -b. And then yeah, let's just do these 3. Actually, I'll throw in one more, D. Let's do -12, n is equal to 108. So please pause the video now, finish all 4 of these questions, and then I'll check the answers. So I assume you have finished. If you haven't finished, then please do these 4 questions first before you move on. So what we need to do in the first question, A, is we need to divide both sides by 6 because there is a coefficient of 6 over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to note to myself, I want to divide both sides by 6 like this. And then you do your working out. A is now equal to 54 over 6. And then A is equal to, once you 54 divided by 6, that's going to be 9. So A is equal to 9 over here. Now, this step is, I would say, the important step. You need to show this step. Show this step. Then for next one, we want to divide both sides by 13 because there is a -13 in front of the B. And so B is now equal to 65 over -13. And then I do not think this can divide. Oh, it does. It's -5. And so if there's a negative at the bottom, it doesn't matter. We can just take it outside. B is equal to negative of 65 divided by 13 is 5. So B is equal to -5. Now, for C, we want to isolate b. We want to isolate the variable. But, b is already on its own. There's nothing. In fact, it's not actually on its own. You see this negative? That is the same as -1 times b. That is the coefficient. -1 is the coefficient of b. -1 is the coefficient of b in this case. That's -1 times b. So in order for us to get rid of the -1, what we need to do is we need to divide both sides by -1. Divide both sides by -1. And so once we divide both sides by -1, the negative and the negative cancels out, and then -17 divided by -1, the negative also cancels out. And so in the end, b is equal to 17. We can put our variable back on the left hand side if we found the answer. Now, last part, d, we want to get rid of the -12, so we're going to divide both sides by -12. So divide by -12, and we're going to divide by -12, and so now n is equal to 108 divided by -12. Show your working out. This is where we show the working out. And then 108 divided by -12. 12 goes into 108, I believe, no, not 14. 108 divided by 12 is 9 times. And so n is equal to -9. So those are 4 example questions on dividing to both sides to isolate the variable. Now, in our second example, example 2, is we have fractions. So let's say now x is divided by 4 is equal to 6, for example. Okay, we want to solve the equation. Now, what happened here? We have our constant, our variable is divided by a number. Okay, so in order for us to isolate, so to get rid, to make 1/4 disappear, you can say it's divided by 4, or at the same time, you can actually write this as the same as 1/4 times x. 1/4 multiplied to x is equal to 6. They are the same. So they are equivalent. So it's the same as 1/4 times x is equal to 6. And so the coefficient of x is 1/4. And so in order to make the 1/4 disappear, the easiest way is to multiply by 4. And so 4 times 1/4 would make it 1, and so we only have x left. And so what we have to do in this case, we're going to multiply by 4 on this side, and we're going to multiply 4 on the other side. And so our next step will be, we have 4/4, that's going to be x is equal to 6 times 4. Now again, we need to show our steps. Make sure we show our steps. And then x is equal to 24. Now some people would think of it as cross multiplication, so the bottom multiplies to the top. It is the same concept. So if it's at the bottom, then you move to the top by multiplying it to the top. So it's the same as multiplying 4 on both sides. It's just that it's different way of writing. So if you prefer to just move things, that's fine. Same as the multiplying over here. What happened for the 6a equals 54? We just moved the 6 to the bottom. That's what happened. Yeah, we moved the 6 to the bottom, but it's the same. It's the same as dividing both sides by 6. So moving back to our example over here. So let's say we have another 4 example questions. And so the first one, let's say that we have c/2 is equal to 15, and then we want to find what c is, and then for b, let's do s over negative 4 is equal to 3. And then c, let's do z over 7 is equal to negative 15. And then last one, d, let's do 5 is equal to r over 6. So we have 4 examples. Let me just give this a little bit more space. Make sure you do these first. Pause the video and do the 4 questions. So I assume you finished the 4 questions. I'm going to go through the answers. So we want to get rid of the 2 over here. So we're going to multiply both sides by 2. It's going to times 2 and times 2. And so my next step will be c is equal to 15 times 2. And so c is equal to 30. Now, so next one, we have s over negative 4. And so in order for us to get rid of the negative 4, we need to multiply both sides by negative 4. And so once you do that, our next step will be s is equal to, so the negative 4 and the negative 4 would cancel out, and so we have only s left, and that's equal to 3 times of negative 4. And so if you remember from our lessons on integers, multiplying negative integers, 3 times negative 4 will be negative of 12. And then last one, c, second last one, we want to multiply both sides by 7 because there's a 7 at the bottom, and so z is equal to negative 15 times 7, and so z is equal to 7 times 15 will be negative 105. So that's going to be 70 plus 35, which is 105. Yeah. And then last one, we have r over 6. 5 equals to r over 6. So we want to get rid of the 6 at the bottom over here. So we're going to multiply 6 and multiply 6. And so we have 5 times 6 is equal to r. And so we can actually swap, both sides of the equation. And so r is equal to, or we can actually solve it first. That's 30 is equal to r. And then we can actually swap it, r is equal to 30, just to make it look nicer. The variable is equal to some number. Okay, and so now, sometimes we have a combined, of multiply and divide. So let's say example 3, let's say that we have 2x over 5 is equal to 8. And we want to solve this equation. And so in order for us to, there's 2 things going on. First of all, x is multiplied by 2 and x is also divided by 5. So you can do it separate. You can multiply both sides by 5 to get rid of the 5 at the bottom. Okay, so the first step, you can do that. And so you have 2x is equal to 8 times 5, which is 40. And then now with this one, you can divide both sides by 2. And so x is essentially 8 times 5 over 2. Well, I can write down 40 over 2, and then that is the same as 20. So another way that you can do is immediately move the 5 to the top and move the 2 to the bottom. We've done some practice on this before. So actually, you can write your next step, x is equal to 8 times 5 all over 2. You can write that too. So as long as you show either one of your working out, that's fine. And so let's do a word problem instead. So let's do a word problem. This time, let's do example word problem. So a movie is sold as a Blu-ray. Now the question, the example from the textbook is DVD, but nobody uses DVD anymore. It's Blu-ray. Blu-ray set that includes 7.5 hours of bonus or extended clips. And then this is 3 times as long as the movie itself. And so we have to write and solve an equation to find the length of the movie. So we have to write and solve the equation, write and solve an equation to find the length of the movie. So I want you to think about how to do this first. Read the question carefully, think about what the equation should be, and then I want you to try it on your own, and then afterwards I'll go to the answer once you have finished. So I assume you have done this already on your own. If you're stuck, that's fine. Just listen carefully on how to do this. So a movie is sold as a Blu-ray set and includes 7 hours of extended clip. Okay, and so just the 7 hours of extended clip, okay, is 3 times as long as the movie itself. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to let a variable be the length of the movie. So I'm going to let x be the length of the movie, and so x, okay, 3 times, so 7.5 hours of extended clip is 3 times as long as the movie, so you can write that as 7.5 is equal to 3 times as long as the movie, 3x. Okay, and so 7.5, I know it's fairly simple. It's 2.5, x is 2.5, but usually we don't like using decimals in equation. We don't like using decimals, so I would change this to a fraction. You should change it to a fraction, and so that this becomes 15 over 2 is equal to 3x, and then you can move the 3 to the bottom now. That's fairly simple. And so we have x is, let me just change it. So that's 15 over 3 times 2 is equal to x. I'm just showing my work. And then the 15 and the 3 will cancel out. That becomes 5 at the top. And so x is equal to 5 over 2 hours. And so now when we answer the question, the movie is 2.5 hours long. Or you can say 2.5 hours long. Okay, so that's an example word problem. For your homework, let's do, I'm going to set half the homework today, and then next lesson in our Zoom meeting, well, I'll set some more practice questions. So let's just do, this is going to be exercise 7.4, and you want to do, you should do questions. So, whoops, over here. Homework will be exercise 7.4. Questions 3, 7, 11, 15, and 19. Actually, let's just do all the odd questions from 3 to 21. Sorry, so 3 to 21 odd questions. So that's around 10, less than 10 questions, around 9 questions. 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21. That's 10 questions, exactly 10 questions. And then let's also do a few more, and then we'll call it a day. 31, 33, 35. And then that is it. Yeah, 30, 31, 33, 35. And then let's just do one problem solving. Let's do one. Let's do at least one problem solving. So what's a good problem solving to do? Let's do 47. So that is the homework for today. And I will see you all in the next Zoom meeting. Make sure you do the homework and then post it onto the class notebook.